right, everyone. Hello, and welcome to Wellbeing Wednesday. Today, I am interviewing Tim Phares, who is a longtime friend of mine and prayer practitioner. And I want to talk today to him about the roles of practitionership in your life for well-being, as well as practitionership for grief specifically. So welcome, Tim. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so a lot of people are hearing this word practitioner that I'm throwing around and wondering what it is. So, do you want to explain to the audience what a prayer practitioner is?
Practitioners endeavor to heal themselves and others through the recognition of the creative power of mind and the ever availability of good. I'm stumbling over my words here. A practitioner has been trained, several years of training in the art and science and skill of affirmative prayer. And the practitioner seeks to demonstrate that power of spiritual realization in everyday affairs and sees through whatever condition, or at least is trained to see through whatever condition, to the truth back of the condition, as Ernest Holmes phrased it, to bring about a change of circumstance.
And so, what would you say? So it sounds like it's affirmative prayer. So, how would a spiritual mind treatment be different from like the traditional understanding of prayer?
Traditionally, the traditional mainstream version of prayer, even when it's treating for some, big cosmic thing, is beseeching. It's God, give me strength, or give me wisdom, love, joy, peace, whatever, let alone a car and money and all of that. We start a treatment knowing that it's done, knowing that, as T.S. Eliot said, the end is where we start from.
And so,
But if it's all God, if it's all spirit, then of course it's already done in spirit, and all we're doing is materializing that. It's very quantum, really. You've got quantum non-locality, you've got this kind of wave of possibility, and then we focus on it, we localize it, and look, all of a sudden it produces this thing here in this form.
I was talking last week with Sarah, and we were talking about how there's this idea that we can make things happen that sometimes are just like, if you think about it enough, you can just make it happen. And we were talking about how she was talking about how that was really hard for her to imagine or believe, because it's like, we used the example, or I brought up the example, I think it was Eckhart Tolle that said, no matter how much you want to be a sumo wrestler, some people are just not built for that. So I was bringing up the point of how metaphysics gets so misinterpreted that we're just getting whatever we want, and it takes out
It's
the idea of co-creation, just like the
not
idea
about
that we're working with something that's working with us, that we're working together like in unison with something.
it's not about things. It's about attuning with the one, that infinite, indescribable one, and letting that one life flow as and through our individual expression of it. And the things just sort of kind of come with it.
Yeah.
And yes,
So
I know you can't always just make yourself whatever. I really wanted to be a ball player when I was a kid. I am, well, maybe the second worst ball player I ever met. Suzanne claimed she was worse. So
Well, so, but and this is where I think this is the interesting co-creation part. I feel like we get some whispers in the dark, like the desire comes through us for something, and it's to lead us in a certain direction, because whatever it is, that something, that desire that's placed in us, it's leading us to look at something else, like what's behind that desire, what's behind that car that I want, or the desire to be a baseball player. What is it? What is the quality of spirit that I really want to embody or imbue in my life? And then sometimes the reaching for that desire is how we fascinatingly end up attaining something else that we truly wanted. Does that make sense?
yes, and I think in some ways we invert it. I'm reminded of lines from Robert Browning. Oh, but a man's reach must exceed its grasp, else what to heaven for? I think sometimes we invert it. We start with, well, I need a car, so I'm going to treat for a car. We start with what we're looking for and try to give that to spirit. We properly start with where spirit wants to express as us, as each of us individually, uniquely, a unique, unrepeatable expression of God. And we let the quality flow through. It comes in the form of intuition, it comes in the form of what we get when we do a visioning. It comes in different forms. And so often we tend to want to lie down until it goes away.
Till what goes away?
I've done that myself. I will admit that I have done that myself. You get this little nudge, and I go,
Okay, yeah.
no, no, not now, no. You know what happens? It gets really loud and pushy, and I don't like being nagged.
Yeah. It'll break your life if you ignore it long enough. It'll take away your
I,
job.
I sometimes say that your calling will keep calling until you answer.
Yeah, that's interesting. So there is a sort of communal relationship that we have with the divine, of a sort of, there is an inner dialogue that takes place. And so in treatment is affirming it, as you called it, affirmative prayer. It's affirming that this inner dialogue is maybe real, or the inner voice is real. Am I saying you're wrong? Help me.
People spend most of their time in the middle of the treatment with the declaration of, this is what I'm treating for, and this is what I'm treating about, and this is what I want, and this is what I need. And the beginning and end parts are the more important. There's only one life. It's expressing as and through me. These are the qualities it's expressing as and through me right now. Treat about whatever the treatment's about. Thank you. I release and I accept. Simple.
Okay. So now we're
Not
in a
easy
well-being.
necessarily, but simple.
Yeah. We're in a well-being show. So I want to kind of like focus on how this idea of prayer practitionership, or spiritual mind treatment more specifically, how does treatment relate to well-being, like, or a sense of like, what's your take on well-being anyway? Let's start there. What is your take on well-being? What do you think about it?
Well-being. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. It's being the best, being your best. It's thriving and living the fullest, most complete life that you can live. And sometimes it throws curveballs. And even major leaguers have trouble hitting curveballs. So Sometimes it throws curveballs and the circumstances aren't quite what you anticipated, or they strike a real blow. And go to spirit. You still live the best life you can. I think that prayer treatment works for that because it helps us get in touch with the highest and best that spirit has for us in the circumstances we're in, and how to manifest and unfold that highest and best in practical material experience in this world, in this body, in this facet of creation.
And so treatment and well-being, what's the relationship there? What is the relationship between affirmative prayer, treatment, and well-being?
I think prayer is essential to well-being, and I think affirmative prayer is probably the highest form of prayer because, as I said, it starts from already knowing that the highest and best is done, that the highest and best is expressing. And I think knowing that is essential to living your best life, to being your best, to being in prosperous and healthy and wise and loving and joyful and all those aspects of God. I think the more you can realize, I love Troward's phrase, I am the person that thou art, and thou art the person that I am. And that's the oneness of us, of spirit and me and spirit. I am the person that thou art the person that I am. Wonderful phrase by Troward. And I think the more we can live in that space, the more we can embody that, the more our life grows and expands and thrives and prospers.
Yeah.
And I think that what it's really about is living the most prosperous, thriving life that we can. One of my bywords is joy. Live in joy. Be joy.
Yeah.
And not just when you're washing dishes.
Yeah. And what you're saying brings to mind, like, the alternative is, if you don't believe that things are already being done on your, well, how do I say this, through you, that are part of this great wholeness, or there's a certain would it be cataclysmic order of things that happen when you believe things are being done to you and against you, and so that you're just kind of this helpless victim in the, a sea of life with no sails and no rudder, and you're just being tossed along. And having that mindset, even because we're talking about affirmative mind treatment, we're talking about your mindset, it has this cataclysmic effect of just creating a, unwell, the dumpster fire life. So I think for sure what you're saying is
one of the most famous quotes in the Bible: as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Yeah.
If you think the world's out to get you, guess what? It's going to act like it is. It may not really be, but it's going to act like it because you ordered it.
Yes.
Michael Beckwith talks about the 4 stages of consciousness, as he calls them, and he calls them to me, by me, through me, and as me. A lot of people live in the first one, to me. The
Yeah.
world is doing X, Y, and Z to me. We had a neighbor down the street. She could find the cloud in any silver lining.
I
She'd
have
wake up
another
in the
friend
morning,
that just said that about somebody that was a neighbor.
she 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 would wake up in the morning and she'd be stirring her coffee and drop the spoon on the floor, and she'd declare that's the kind of day it was going to be, and darned if it wasn't. They had a dog that Toby was a bit of a yapper. Well, I'm over there one day and I kind of get down at Toby's level and I say, "No, Toby's a good boy, isn't it? Aren't you, Toby?" And he got really quiet. And I hear her yelling in from the kitchen, "No, he's not. He's a bad boy." And he starts up again.
To me.
I used that in a talk. And then people discover metaphysics and they go, "Hey, I can manifest a parking space whenever I need one.
Mm-hmm.
This is cool." And they think they're doing it.
Yeah. Okay. That's probably that phase that I was talking about with Sarah last week, where it feels like if I just say long enough that I'm a sumo wrestler, then I'll become one, or whatever it is. That causal, like, oh, I'm in charge now.
Are you? And
Well,
then,
I think that we're, like I said, I think I'm in the co-creation zone. So which one would that be? So we
and
have to me, and then what's the
then
next one for me?
through me. And
Okay.
then as we get deeper into it and we discover the reciprocal relationship, we get into uh, that space that Gibran nicely described in the phrase, "I am the flute through which the breath of the divine passes."
Yes, I'm the flute that Christ blows through. Yeah, I say that prayer a lot. Hmm.
I am the flute through which the breath of the divine passes. Once in a while, the mystic, the mystic in all of us, because we all have it. Some people just don't quite know how to tap into it. But once in a while, we get in that really mystical space where we understand that I and the Father are one, that God and I are one, the same thing. And God is operating not just through me, but as me. As Ernest Holmes said, God as me, in me, is me.
But not separate from everyone else, not
Very hard. It's very
exclusive.
hard to live there, though.
A lot of people are afraid of that because they believe when you say that, you're saying it in some exclusionary way, to imagine that God is here but not there,
I'm
and
reminded of a story that Ramdas told. He appeared at one time at an event in Silver Spring that Suzanne and I went to, the Heart to Heart Festival, which I don't think they're doing anymore. Um, and he talked about talking to his brother who was in the mental hospital. And his brother, he said to him, "I don't understand this. I tell people I'm God and I'm in this hospital. You tell people you're God and you're the great Ramdas." And he said, "The difference, brother, is I tell them they are too."
yeah, yeah. It's a lot of people like an exceptional God and an exclusionary exceptional God idea, like Jesus, the exclusion, not the example, or the exclusion and the example. It's like, hey, well, that is mutually exclusive. um, but they like that. But at the same time, when you do like Jesus, Christian, you're Christ like, then you're the blasphemer or the crazy person. And so, just to clarify, we're saying, I am God, all is God.
I will simply quote somebody that they like a lot. The things that I have done, you also shall do, and greater than these.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And, you know, greater.
And greater than these shall you do.
Yeah. That's an important reminder from the big man himself.
And they all say things like that. Buddha and Lao Tzu and Confucius say, and Muhammad and all the Sikh gurus, they all say things very much like that. It's not, they all will tell you they're not anybody special. They're just very attuned, very enlightened.
Yes. And interestingly enough, with Jeezy Crazy, um, as Eddie Izzard calls him in one of his stand-ups, but he taught prayer. When he gave the Lord's Prayer, he didn't say repeat this same exact words over and over and over again into redundancy.
In fact, about 2 lines above that, he says, when you pray, pray not in vain repetitions, but when you pray, pray in this manner.
And the manner is what? Is it a spiritual mind treatment tip?
And the most, in a way, it is.
Oh, it is. I think it is.
Definitely acknowledging.
It starts with this. It's all the steps are in there.
It's all God, our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed.
Right.
What you are, the thing itself, what it is. Yes.
Thy kingdom come. You know what that means? The things that God is are right here, right now,
on earth as it is in heaven. So we're connecting that God and man, God and earth.
And then there's the declaratory part, give us this day our daily bread. And
so that's as on earth as it is in heaven is a unification. It's exactly what that is.
Exactly. And then
the physical and the ethereal are together as one.
And then he declares what's needed, daily bread, forgiveness.
Yes. Yeah. So let's go through the steps of prayer. So we have the first, let's go through the steps of affirmative treatment for people that have not looked at the Lord's Prayer in this way or looked at affirmative prayer in this way. What do we start with? Like you said, like the first steps and the last steps are the most important. So let's go through each of them and say what they are.
Start with what we call recognition, which is some statement to the effect of God is all there is. It's all one, however you want to state that.
Great, mighty, hallowed.
There's only one life. That life is God's life. That life is perfect, and that life is my life now.
Yes. So what my life now, what's that step?
And then we move, and then we're in unification. The life of God, the love of God, the light of God, the peace of God, the power of God, the beauty of God, the joy of God are mine right now because of what I just said, because it's all God.
Right. There is no spot.
It all follows very logically, actually. And
an infinite God can't an infinite God can't have there is no spot where God is not. So an infinite God there can't be an other, or there would be some real estate disputes, right? There can't be an outside of God. Right. Everything's in.
How do you get outside of the infinite?
Yes. You can feel outside of the infinite, though, right? Like, isn't that why we treat? Because we feel outside of the infinite.
You can create the impression that you're separate.
Mm-hmm.
by using the very power that is the divine power in you. If you use it a certain way, you can use it to create the illusion that God's out there and I'm over here. I remember in college having a discussion with a friend of mine who was very Christian. He was the president of the local InterVarsity Christian Fellowship chapter. Great guy, but we didn't agree theologically. And I'm saying to him one time, okay, if God's omnipotent and God's omniscient, then God has to be infinite.
Yes.
Because if not, there's some place to get away from God's power and out of God's sight. And we just said that that isn't so. So God has to be infinite, which means God has to be in you, in me, and everyone. He says,
Everywhere.
you know, he wasn't quite buying that. I said, okay. So what you're telling me is God's here and God's here, but not here. Okay, I'm going to move over here. Now you're telling me God moved over here.
God's trying to get around you, Tim, so much.
And he kind of looked at me like,
so much. So we're not letting God in, we're letting the belief that God is separate from us. We're releasing the
God
belief.
in, we're opening to the expression of what already is.
You know, it's also funny to me is that the word evil and the word live are like the flip reverse of each other. Backwards. It's like we're living in reverse just by believing against ourselves to some extent, you know.
So having now declared, having now recognized, recognition is the first step, the infinite, the oneness, the wholeness that is, and having unified with it by recognizing that that life is my life now.
Right.
That all of those qualities of God, whichever ones happen to be relevant to what we're treating about today, are my life, are my qualities. The next thing that follows logically from that is whatever it is that I'm in need of, I have it. I know that I have abundance, that I have perfect health, that I have whatever it is.
Yes. To those that have shall be given, to those who have not shall be taken, even that which they have.
Realize it, and that's called realization, because we realize, we make real.
Yes. Or it's to he who hath shall be given.
Those things that are already there.
Yeah.
Now, we've realized it, we've made it real. There are only a couple of things to do.
In all things, give thanks.
In all things, be grateful, as Paul said.
That's 4.
Notice in all things and not for. You don't have to be grateful for an illness.
Yes, that's right. In all things, give thanks.
In that circumstance, there is something to be grateful for.
Yes, indeed.
And if you want more, please, a good place to start is thank you.
Yes.
We're at step 4, Thanksgiving. And no, it doesn't mean that we have to eat a turkey with every treatment. Knowing that we have and we are whatever it is that we are requiring, thank you.
Yeah.
I give thanks, I give thanks, I give thanks, as somebody I know would say if she were here.
Oh, she's here.
And so I say it for her.
Yes.
And then there's only one thing to do. Release. Let go.
Yeah.
Know that it's done. And quietly await your next beginning.
Yeah. Surrender, detachment, release. Right.
Very, very Buddhist, that.
Well, I think every religion has a component of
But
Praying as if the end is already achieved,
the end is where we start from. I'll quote
right.
Eliot again, the end is where we start from.
Pray as if it's already happened. Pray as if it's already done. Yeah, that's in every, and that means that you don't have to worry about it. Why, worry about the flowers of the field, right?
Those
Neither do
flowers
they
that are
toil nor do they reap.
There's flowers that are sitting there. Somebody planted a seed, the flowers grew. Do you think the person went in and went, I wonder if my seed's growing? No.
Yeah.
Planted the seed and they let
Yeah.
go.
They did the watering, they did the thing.
And
Now you can't dig it up to make sure it's coming. Did it sow?
That's released. I know that it's done. I planted the seed. I know there's a flower. I'm going to throw a little water on every now and then. I like to say that affirmations are kind of our spiritual watering. We've done the treatment, we've planted the seed, and then, we can do a quickie affirmation to remind ourselves and keep ourselves in that frame of mind. I sometimes say that that's our spiritual watering of the seed that we planted in treatment.
So,
and so,
why
you water it and you let it grow.
Okay, how do I say this? When I am in a space of where I'm struggling to let go, or I'm struggling to treat for myself or about myself. I'm struggling to treat about myself, my own condition, my own situation. I'm not seeing something. I'm not feeling the connection. And that's when I do what?
That can be hard for people because you're in the situation. And sometimes you're in it so much that you can't quite see the way out of it. That's a good time to talk to a practitioner. The practitioner is trained to see the truth back of the condition, as Ernest Holmes put it. The practitioner is trained to see the truth, to know the truth, and to help you come to that place of seeing it and knowing it for yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And
That's the job. Actually, that's the job. And sometimes we do that by treatment. If it's a little bit more, if you're in it a little bit more, a practitioner will happily do a session for you and with you. There's a fee involved. You pay for professionals.
Yeah.
But the practitioner will happily and use treatment and discussion and questions and things like we're doing here and
Visioning.
I sometimes call it being a spiritual doorman. Holding the door open until you're ready to walk through it.
Yes.
And yeah, that's a little bit of me trying to be a little humorous, but there really is something to that metaphor.
Now, do practitioners see other practitioners?
Oh yeah, I mean, practitioners have blocks just like anybody else, and best way to handle that is to talk to another practitioner or a minister, but to talk to another practitioner is always good. Practitioners are encouraged to have a practitioner. It's not quite required, but strongly encouraged.
And I can see why. I mean, it's been beneficial in my life, throughout my life, to use treatment, spiritual mind treatment, affirmative prayer, and to see practitioners when I get hung up. I see you. So that is one of my tools that I have to. You're a tool, Tim. Tool time, Tim. Reminds me of that like Tim Allen show. He was Tool Time Tim or something like that. But it's good. Um,
He actually wore a sweatshirt for my alma mater on that show one time.
oh really?
Yeah,
Oh, that's great.
so
Um,
I'm happy with that.
who are the most inspirational people or in your life, or what
You know, it's
people.
funny. I used to have a ready answer for that question.
Oh,
I would go to workshops and people would say, "Who's the most inspirational person you know?" And I would say, "She's sitting right next to me. My dear wife, God bless her, was born with moderately severe cerebral palsy. You wouldn't have known it. I mean, there was a little bit of a speech if you listened closely enough. There were a couple of things that she was very good at falling down. Um,
I never saw her fall down. I never saw her fall down.
I did. And she herself made jokes about, I'm very good at falling. But she had two master's degrees. She had a very successful career. She was a practitioner. She she was brilliant. She was. I'm a little biased, but and I would say she's sitting right next to me, and Suzanne would look at me as if to say, "All I'm doing is." She really didn't understand it until the last few years of that she was here. She really didn't understand what it was that people thought was so inspirational. But she's got this condition, and you can't do these things in her condition, except they forgot to tell her that. So
So she was sumo wrestling.
they forgot to tell her, you can't.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't think she believed in it anyway. She was very fond of telling the story. She, when she was a girl, Suzanne went to religious science youth seminars, and they had a little segment called Youth Speaks, where they'd get the campers up there and make them talk for 2 or 3 minutes. Well, she could not play jacks because of her condition. Couldn't get the jack fast enough. She worked and worked and worked and worked, and she got to the point that she could do onesies. And she got up and she did a little talk about doing onesies. And, everybody applauded and they went on about their business. Several years later, we're attending a weekend seminar retreat put on by a combined ministerial class from the Baltimore Center and the Columbia Center, several of whom we knew. And the speaker was the then president of Religious Science International, Reverend Candace Beckett. Candace's maiden name was Candace Jones. She was known as Candy Jones. She was a religious science youth seminar camper. And she saw Suzanne, and, they greeted each other. And she got up, and while she was talking, she talked about Suzanne and the onesies and how it had inspired her and started her path to ministry.
Wow. Wow.
I think that's when Suzanne finally figured out
The
that,
impact.
I wasn't just flattering my wife when I said that she was the most inspirational person I knew. Because if if she could do that, then what is it what can you do without cerebral palsy, without that? Now we all have our conditions that hold us back, but they're not as severe.
Yeah.
And if she could do what she did, why can't you? Why can't I?
Yeah.
I remember one time we were at a Chinese restaurant and Suzanne's eating with chopsticks. Well, I never could work chopsticks. She
Yeah.
says, yeah, if I can do it, you can do it. Here, look, I ate Chinese food with chopsticks, have for years, because Suzanne said, if I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
She was right, as usual.
Oh, so she had a massive impact on not just you, but a lot of people. And
And of course, my mother raised me in religious science. And I grew up with one of the marquee names in the movement, Dr. Raymond Charles Barker. And the emphatic way that I always say, and so it is Barker. I'm channeling Dr. Barker. I mean that he always said it with enthusiasm. Only time I ever saw him that he looked like he was a little off his game with the Sunday after Ernest had made transition, because they were very close. In fact, he said that the reason he was the minister in New York, he said, I was walking down the hall one day and Ernest said to me, Raymond, you're opening New York for me. So there you go.
So you recently lost Suzanne. Was that like a year ago? How long has it been now?
18 months and a few days.
Okay. And how long were you all together?
37 years.
Wow. Like most people, you know, no, most people don't have relation. I certainly like haven't had I'm in my longest relationship. It's going well. I can't even think of how long we've been together. 13 years maybe. So yeah, 37. Wow. There's a lot of grief. And I've
I
seen
think you
you.
met him when you were still in Virginia. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
I've seen you through the grief deliver some like amazing talks, like just on your Facebook page and stuff like that, about
Thank you.
how you're handling the grief. Is I think somehow you're becoming one of more inspirational, more I don't know what it is. Is how does treatment play into the process of your grief and your practitionership, and or your grief play into your practitionership, or your practitionership play into, I mean, grief is to lose someone of 37 years that, you know, you obviously admired and got to. And
I think it opened a new space. Suzanne and I, for many years, were very involved in the International New Thought Alliance. I'm still the Capital District President. So if anybody is in DC, Maryland, or Virginia and would like to know, I'm the person to contact. But commercial aside, there was a talk at one of the INTA congresses many years ago. It said, on my way to the top, I hit bottom. Well, you want to hit bottom? Be there when the love of your life makes transition. But that opened a whole new depth. I think I'm a much deeper more open person than I was, and I was already hopefully on that on the way to the all of that. Not to brag, but I think that it opened a whole new depth. You don't really understand grief until you go through it.
Yeah.
And it's something you can't go around. It's something you can't do spiritual bypass on. And it's kind of like an iceberg. There's this little chunk that's above the surface, and then there's all of that that's below, that only fellow grievers really seem to see. And so people react to that part that's above the surface that they can see.
Right.
And some of it's helpful, and some of it makes me want to say shut up, but
Yeah.
I'm too polite to do that. Although one of our nieces, every time I post anything about starts into her, you need to move on. May you never understand what I'm experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I even fall into that, like where you know,
But I think
I haven't, you know,
I think
I
one
don't
of the
think
ways
I've lost my family more in different ways, but and that has brought up a lot of grief. And so listening to things
I
that you
think
say helps me to more.
I
I've
think
been trying to bypass it. Like I've been trying to shelf it. And so listening to you is definitely
Dr.
helping me
Arthur Chang,
confront it.
Dr. Arthur Chang, who's the minister at Founders Church, which was right next to the building where the movement had their headquarters for many, many years, the building where Ernest's office was. Dr. Chang is fond of saying, don't try to pray around it when the way is to pray through it.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
as one of the founding ministers at our center used to say, you may have to walk through the valley of the shadow of death. You don't have to build a house there.
Yeah. Don't set up camp there.
And right, don't go camping. It's He also would remind us, and I used this in one of my recent videos, how far can you go into a dark forest? How far can you go into the dark wilderness? Halfway. After that, you're coming out of it.
Yeah.
You've got to walk through it. And it's painful sometimes.
Yeah. I'm finding after our treatment work together that I'm saying I'll allow it a lot more. I'll allow it. I'll allow it. When it comes to grief, when it comes to a lot of things that show up in my life, it's helping me to look at so many things and just say I'll allow it
Not my
instead of
preference, but it is what it is.
yeah. Feel like and that might be the thing about the difference between
And the other
becoming
thing,
becoming the sumo wrestler and forcing yourself to be as with might, is that we try to see life as a battle. And that's, that was kind of what I was talking to Sarah about. It's like we're not we're
we
not
all we all
we're not fighting for our chance to be such and such. We're relaxing into it,
we're
into
letting it
oneness.
move through us, and our gifts are all different. Some people are singers, some people are writers, some people look at a camera and talk and do it pretty well, and some people are ball players, some people, we all have different talents. Trying to force what you're not here to do gets in the way of what you are here to do. And I will quote my dear inspirational wife again. She did a talk on perfect, whole, and complete, and she said, "Me? I have cerebral palsy. How can I be perfect, whole, and complete?" But what she came to was, we're all here for a purpose. Each of us for our own purpose, which is God's purpose expressing as us. And each of us is perfect, whole, and complete for the fulfillment of that purpose.
Yeah.
And it does not look like perfection to.
Well, grief doesn't feel perfect, whole, and complete. It feels
Oh, it feels
messy.
very incomplete. There's a great big hole. I
And
I said in an article that I wrote, I said, they say that grief leaves a hole in your life. This isn't a hole, it's a canyon.
yeah. And yet, in this situation, I feel like as a practitioner, you're doing your most powerful work in your life. Do you feel the same?
I think so. I think I've taken on a whole new depth. It's partly understanding, and it's understanding the principles of the science of mind, which I grew up with. It's partly the support of my spiritual community. Also, there's a widow and widower group that I joined, and we meet every Sunday on Zoom, and that's been very helpful. And I think that I've been able to help them just as
Absolutely.
they've been able to help
I'm
me.
not in it, but I have no doubt. I have no doubt.
We help each other, and we help walk each other through it. And hopefully I've been able to share a little insights, be a little bit of an inspiration, because my life is inspire to be as inspirational as I can be. I'd love to be as much of an inspiration as Suzanne was. And maybe, and I'm not coming from anybody else, this would sound a little mean. Coming from the person who's experiencing it, maybe it's different, but maybe I had to lose her to open up to being that inspiration.
I understand.
At the heck of a price.
What you're saying right now reminds me of that, and maybe this pertains to Suzanne as much as anybody, that Daniel Nahmod song, I'm Glad I Came.
If this is my last song. By the way, Daniel does free concerts for about an hour every Monday night on his Facebook page, Daniel Nahmod USA. So 9 o'clock Eastern, I think that'd be 7 your time. Anyway, so if you're interested.
So
Yes, I know what you mean. If Is the world a little bit brighter? Is the world?
a little more kind,
If
right?
Then I'm glad I came.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I didn't mean to be a puddle of like tears through this interview. I hope we haven't lost everyone.
Oh, this is.
But that's part of what it is, I guess,
It is what it is. It's real.
Yes, yes,
Which,
yes,
by the way, you just mentioned Daniel Nahmod. That's the title of his current album, his newest album, Real.
yes.
So,
Feels very real. So, Tim, if people want to work with you in grief or in just practitionership through whatever life circumstances, how do they find you?
I have a Facebook page. I have I can be emailed, I can be reached by email, I can be reached by phone, there's always Zoom. Give me
Zoom you. Who zoom in who?
a Zoom link and I'll be here.
Was that Aretha who zoom in who?
I spend a whole lot of time on Zoom anyway. I've gotten It's amazing though, things that I can't quite figure out about the mechanics of Zoom. I
Y-
had a picture on for when I'm off screen.
Yes.
Computer did something and now all I have is our names again and I'm trying to figure out how I put the picture back.
Don't worry about it. It's all clear on my end. Well, and you have to like this to admit to our audience, we had a first conversation and somehow the recording cut off in the middle. I don't know if my internet went out or what. And so we had to redo this talk, and it's so much better this time, I think. And I'm so glad to get to talk to you again, just because it's just such a wonderful opportunity and it opens up so much. It talking to you opens up, and sometimes, you know, as the love pours out, so do the tears. But it's always a really great experience. So thank you so much, Tim, for sharing so much that's so close to you and so deep
Thank
for
you for
you.
having me on.
It's
This has
been
been a
just
really great
wonderful.
conversation.
It's always fun. It doesn't always. Here I am weeping. But the joy is big. The joy is big. So thank you so much. And thank you everybody for watching. And I will have links provided below for you to reach Tim. And if you need his help, I'm sure he's there to help you. And just have a wonderful week, everyone. Thank you so much.